What's going on, everybody? I'm super excited about this next video here. Today we are going to be reviewing the all-new APR air intake system for the Audi SQ7, SQ8, and the 4.0T engines. I am so excited right now. This is their new intake system. It is made out of a carbon fiber single body. I believe it's a forged type of part. You'll see, I don't know if you're going to be able to see on the inside here, but there is the carbon fiber design on the inside. The outside is definitely the forged look as well. It is a matte intake. I love the badging right here on the intake. And this thing just is like stupid light. Like I can't even tell you how light of a piece this actually feels. We also included in the package have a bunch of new hoses and clamps and gaskets that we will need to use to be able to install this. One of the nice touches that I see here, if I can actually get it to align correctly, the APR hoses actually have the APR logos on them. I think it's just a nice little touch to be able to show that your vehicle has some of the APR badging on it. It's just kind of, as it's in the engine bay, you're only going to probably be able to see this beautiful piece right here. But knowing behind the scenes, if any of the other hoses do expose themselves, you can kind of rotate that APR badging to be able to be shown within the intake area as well. Also included in this package are the turbo inlets. They are made out of billet aluminum, and they also have 10mm bolts that will go into the turbos as well. We do have a bit of work to take it apart, so I will probably have this as my first look video and then dive right into installing it on the engine. I love that APR did do a really good manual of the installation, but it does take some time to be able to flip through the pages, hence why I don't know if you can see back in this corner over here, I have an iPad charging so I can kind of like scroll through the pages as I'm doing it just to make sure that I don't miss any of the torque specs. They do include torque specs. The last thing that I totally geeked out about when I first opened this is this massive filter. I cannot believe how incredibly massive this filter is. It is made out of a cotton gauze, and it is rechargeable like all of your standard Cayenne air filters. You'll see that there is some APR badging on it as well, but this thing is just absolutely massive. When you see it in person, it is... I was floored when I took this thing out. Like, I was not expecting it to be that big. I mean, I knew it had a decent size filter, but that thing is absolutely massive. I have another video on that, just that piece where I kind of get into details of all the applications it fits on, the 2.9, the 3.0, the 4.0, on the Audis, the Bentleys, the Lamborghinis, as well as the Porsches. It has multiple applications. It is the ultimate air filter as branded by APR. Thank you, APR, for continuing to invest in this vehicle. Super excited as a person that likes to futz with his vehicles to be able to have some stuff I can install and play around with and give some really good reviews. So APR, please keep it up because this is awesome. It's exciting. It is one of the first intake systems that are on the market, and sometimes being the leader is a good thing. So thank you, everyone. Let's cut over to the engine bay. I wanted to quickly dive into what is required to be able to do the install. This picture is from a post-install, so I'd already installed the intake on the vehicle. It just helps to know what parts you need, get everything together, so when you're ready for the install, you can do it. At the top, you'll see that I have a hex 5mm, a Torx T30, a Torx T25, and a 7mm 1/4-inch socket. The instructions call for a 10mm socket to be able to install the inlet flange into the turbo. That is not true. It is actually a hex 5mm. It's a thumb screw that has a hex 5mm end on it, so you'll definitely need to do a hex 5mm. Double check your bag when you get it of hardware to make sure that you have clamps and those bolts, because my package did not include any bolts, and they had to next day air it over to me, and that's where I found out that it wasn't a 10mm, it was a 5mm hex. The next thing that I have is the manual. One very interesting part about this is the manual is very helpful. It has specific torque specs to be able to torque things down. Don't just tighten it so it's tight. Make sure that you follow the torque specs, because this vehicle is so expensive, you don't want to strip anything, and that will be a very expensive mistake. So definitely make sure you have a copy of the manual. I used a tablet to be able to show the manual as I was working on the vehicle, but obviously you could print it off. No manual was included in my box, so you'll need something for reference. A light is also very, very necessary. It is very dark in the tight spaces of the car. So I just used a Ryobi light with a battery pack on it, and it did the job. I was able to kind of move it around to where I needed to see to be able to work on the engine. The next thing I had is spare spring clamps. As I spoke about the bolts not being included, they also did not include the spring clamps. Luckily, when they sent everything next day, they did send me new spring clamps, but one of the clamps disformed. So when I was squeezing it, I kind of pinched the clamp itself a little too much, and it didn't really work well. So I just had a spare one. Maybe having spare ones may not hurt, especially when you're working on cars, and spring clamps are known to break and kind of pinch and disform and stuff. So I did have to use some spring clamps. The next thing that you'll see here are two torque wrenches. The one on the right is a torque wrench that I couldn't use. I actually had to buy a new one. The one on the right went from 120 to 900 inch-pounds of torque. That was too high. The instructions call from anywhere between, I think it's like 20 and 90 foot-pounds of torque. There's different values in between for each of the bolts and hose clamps. And so I had to buy a new, I think it says 30 to 200 inch-pound wrench to be able to torque everything down. One big recommendation I have, you'll see that I do have a lot of 3/8 inch sockets and adapters and extensions and stuff like that in this picture. Definitely do 1/4 inch. That bottom bolt on the turbo is really, really, really difficult to get to. It involved a lot of swearing. It took almost 40 minutes for me to get the bottom bolts out because I was using, I think, too big of a wrench. A 1/4 inch wrench set is going to save you a lot of agony in getting that bottom bolt out, because you'll have enough clearance to get it around the turbo inlet from the like the intercooler. So definitely please take my advice and save yourself a lot of stress and get 1/4 inch socket set, not rocket set. That'd be pretty cool. The next thing that you'll see is I have a clamp or groove joint pliers. You'll definitely need those. You'll see that there's an angle on it. That angle came in very, very, very handy. The hoses that you're going to be trying to manipulate and move and get things off of sit right underneath the support, right next to the radiator, right next to the fans. And it is a very tight space. It's an awkward space. You can't really get a needle nose pliers into it. So you'll need something that is able to kind of manipulate those spring clamps. And the spring clamps were almost all the way towards the vehicle. So I actually had to take the hose and torque it a little bit to kind of like move the hose upwards to be able to get a grasp of it. And then I was able to kind of take off the hoses off the vehicle. Those clamps are glued in. I will repeat it, the clamps are glued in. So it's not like you can just like kind of wiggle it back and forth. They stay in that fixed position on the vehicle, which is also another layer of difficulty to try to get them to move. You'll see that I have a 7mm socket driver. That is going to be to take off the hose clamps on the vehicle, not the spring clamps, but the hose clamps. And then you'll also see that I have just it says a 1/4 inch socket wrench. That's actually 3/8. But the point there is you'll want a 1/4 inch set. And then angle picks to be able to get the PCV off. Be very, very careful when you're taking the PCV off. You can break some pieces in there. So you have to just use one, kind of hold it in place, and use another, and it'll pop off. You do have to depress 2 of the sides of the spring clamp to be able to get it off. And if you break it, it's like $150 to replace that hose, which is ridiculous, but you know, it is what it is. It's what it costs for these vehicles. So these are all the tools that you'll need. And I will now truly cut over to the engine bay and start showing you the install. All right, so the first thing that we do as part of the install, we take off the oil cap, since it is integrated into the engine cover itself. And then there's these pins on the side that you pull outward. So it just kind of pulls this way, pops out. You have to do it on both sides of the cover, and the engine cover should come off fairly easily, which there it goes. So the next thing that it has me do is replace the oil cover again. You obviously don't want any contaminants or anything getting in there. So I replaced that in there. That is not my happy camper. All right, for this step, it does talk about taking this piece off. So you just kind of push this button here, pull this off and kind of out, and that will be out of the way from the entire system to be able to take it off. All right, now what I did is I now have an extension. I didn't actually show this on my video, but I definitely think that you do need an extension to be able to pull the existing intake off. You'll see that this is a T25. That's gonna work perfectly for these. So here we go to unscrew them. Gotta save these. Do not lose those bolts. Pull this up maybe, like that. Pull this up, and the intake should be able to come out kind of in that fashion. So taking a look at it, I mean, it is pretty interesting. If you take a look on the inside here, it definitely feels a little bit lighter. It's way flimsier plastic on the inside, which is interesting. There's a gasket here. And as you can tell, this car sucks some major air, which is pretty cool to see that there's a lot here. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty gnarly in there. So I'm probably gonna take a quick vacuum and vacuum the inside. Clearly we wanna make sure that this is nice and clean for the replacement. So the next step in the process is to be able to take off the release, the hood release. There's a button right back here that you push in, and this piece comes off pretty easily. So the button's right there, comes off right there. Super easy to be able to get off. The next thing we have to do is take off all of these pins. They are the push pin style, so the centerpiece separates, so you kind of have to pry the outsides, pull those up, and then the rest of the connector comes out. I don't know how hard some of these will be. I do have the trim puller to see if I can kind of get in there to be able to pop some of these, but I'm gonna go around and I'm going to take some of these out. We're gonna try this one here, the 90-degree tool here, to see if I can kind of get there. Oh, that is way easier. So you may want to use your 90-degree tool to kind of pry that out, and then the rest should be able to come out pretty easily here. So let's take a second. There you go, it pops out. So another really interesting note, the instructions show a bunch more pins across the front here. On my car, there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So that's a major difference between the instructions and the SQ7 itself. Now, the next thing you have to do is be able to separate these guys. So you kind of have to lift up on the front here. So we'll go ahead and do that. There's some retention clips there, like so. You'll be able to pull it out like that. So that piece came out as one whole piece that would clip into that. So this piece is out. So we finally have access to some of the hose clamps inside the intake itself. So here is the 7mm screw. I'm gonna loosen this up a bit. I'm not gonna do it all the way, but I'm gonna loosen it up a fair amount to be able to make sure that I can take these off. So now that that's loose, it tells me to lift up on the corner here, and as well as on the corner on the other side here, to pull that up. And then I should be able to slide this out, which I can. So there you go. This whole intake piece is now out of the vehicle. I just want to take a moment here to just take a look at this beautiful engine design here in the SQ7. What a pretty design. I mean, this just looks so pretty. You see the turbos, you see the cats, the old intake, but that will be fixed shortly. But holy cow, does this thing look pretty. Look at that engine. And while we're at it, if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to my channel below. I have a lot of tuning videos and mods that I'll be doing to this vehicle. Please, please, please subscribe. I need subscribes and views to keep doing this. It helps kind of support my passion of doing this stuff. So if you like it, please subscribe. We're gonna dive in a little bit deeper now into the install. The next piece that I need to take off are all of these T30 screws. The big thing they talk about is do not connect those side crash items. That will totally mess with the vehicle. It's going to cost you a lot of money to fix. Do not disconnect these. What you do is you slide them off. So once this is ready to be taken off, you slide them off. Do not disconnect them because what I understand, that is not a cheap venture. So what we're going to do here is we are going to start taking these things off here. So I'm going to go across over on this side and see if I can get it off. Okay. I was expecting that to be a whole lot worse than it is. So let's try this one here. For this piece, I'm going to get very up close and personal. Remember, do not disconnect these. What you can do is you can wiggle them off. So they should pull off like so, and then let it be. All right, real quick, this side was a little bit more difficult to get off. I'm gonna kind of rotate, so this is gonna be the passenger side. I ended up having to put the pick in there and kind of push against here to kind of start pulling it off. I did get it off, but yeah, I definitely had to give this a little bit more love. It was kind of hanging up on like a rough edge on the inside. There's definitely a rough edge there, probably when it manufactured. Some debris or something that's catching there. So that side was a little more difficult. Don't know how that's going to be for your car, but I'm calling it out because this is something that you may or may not run into. All right, so now that everything's disconnected here and here, the bolts are out, this piece will come out. So I'm gonna set this one aside. So first thing that I ran into, I didn't think this could move, but the oil inlet moves just fine. But this PVC connector is a beast to get off. It says you're supposed to push on both sides of the connector and then pull out. And I'm telling you, that is not budging like at all. There it goes. Whew. You're gonna have to use a little bit of manpower to be able to get this connector to remove. It is not an easy one. You're gonna have to pinch it, squeeze it, kind of wiggle it back and forth, and then it pulls straight out. Was not expecting that. Got a little nervous there, but it's out. We're good to go. The next piece is going to require, I think, equal amount of finagling here. It's this PVC connector on this side. They say that there are pins in here, and 2 of them need to be depressed before it will come away. So I have one in there. I'm just going to grab another pick to see if I can cheat my way in there. So it says that you're supposed to depress 2 pins. They only call for one 90 degree tool. I kind of call baloney because I think this needs a little bit more than that to be able to get this to release. They say you need to press 2 for it to come out. 1 clearly is not enough. So we're gonna try 2 different tools to get it undone. Wish me luck, everyone. All right, so I finally got it off. The connectors are on the releases are on the outside, so you do need to be able to get to this piece to push it in to be able to have it pop off. So it was actually kind of a real pain. So far, this has been the trickiest part of the entire intake install. The next thing that they're gonna do is gonna be on front of the turbo, so I'm gonna relocate the camera. So I'm gonna take this moment to share my quick and big displeasure with these easy disconnects. You're supposed to squeeze both sides and pull away. I don't know if my finger strength isn't what it used to be before, but squeezing these and pulling these away were not fun. They also stick because they're like gasketed twice on the device. I definitely was not blown away by being able to take those off. So the second hardest thing of this install are getting these connectors off of the intake up front. There's 2 of them. You have to remove one over here, one over there, pull them away, and they disconnect. So that was definitely another really difficult part of this install.
So the next thing that they have you do on this particular engine is to separate the vacuum lines from the factory supplied clips. There's 2 clips here. I believe you just have to pull it up like so. Pull this one up, or actually probably this one goes out, maybe, no. Yeah, that one does go out. So this one pulled up, and this one needs to pull out. So this one goes up, this one pushes this way. The clips still retain intact on here. They just clip back to these plastic pieces on there. So the next step of this is actually removing the bolts off of the turbo itself. It is a T30 Torx. I'm a little concerned because obviously it's on a vehicle. This gets hot and cold, expands and contracts. Don't know how hard they're going to be to get off, but here's our experiment and we're going to try now. I do have a small extension on here to be able to navigate, I think, a little bit to make it easier. So we will see how this goes for being able to, oh, look at that. That was very, very easy to do. That is actually really happy. That makes me really, really happy. I got that one, and this other one is kind of down far in there. I'm gonna have to find a creative way to get down to that one with the wrench. It's not quite finger loose, but it is definitely loose. Oh yeah, it is. It's finger loose. So I can take these out. I'm definitely not going to lose these. Nope, it doesn't come out. So it must have something in there to stop it from falling out when we're working on it, which I guess is also a good thing. So let me see if I can loosen this guy up a bit. Got it. So you definitely need a contraption like this, very small, to be able to get that bottom bolt. I'm gonna have to work on it a little bit, so I'm gonna fast forward to get all of these out. But that bottom one did loosen up without an issue. It's right down underneath in this area. So here we go. I'm just gonna and we're still going. I am literally doing like 2 or 3 threads at a time as I'm screwing this here. It is a very awkward bolt to get to. It was a similar problem with the SQ5 with all of those intakes on the turbo inlets. Unless you had like an air-powered pneumatic tool to be able to take this off, this is a beast, absolute beast to try to unscrew here. All right, more fun. So let's see if I can get a good light on this. There's a hose clamp there, there's a hose clamp on the other one. Those need to come off. So I'm gonna have to use so there's a hose clamp here and a hose clamp on the other one. I have to take these off to get this entire section off. So you'll see, you're definitely gonna see me take pliers of some sort, pinch it and see if I can pull it off. Never have hose clamps ever been easy to get off, especially with heat distortion and stuff like that. So I'll probably be working on that in the video. Just wanted to show it to you up close that there's hose clamps I need to take off, but this side is finally loose. That bottom bolt is gnarly to be able to get out. I'll show you why in a little bit. All right, so I think I figured out how to get the hose clamp out. I have to pull this out. I'm bending it all the way this way, and it actually gives me an angle to get to it. I know that's not what they said in there, but the hose clamps are in the downward position, and there's no tool I can get to be able to pinch it. So the best way I can do it is just pull out, bend the hose out, do the clamp, and yank it out. So that's what I'm gonna do here. But I just wanted to show you kind of like taking it out and folding it over, and I should be able to get to the hose clamp now and disconnect it. All right, second inlet time here. So this one I am using the extension. You gotta find where, there it is, and there you go. No major problems there in being able to get it to grab. So what I'm gonna do is just ease it out a little bit. It's off. Whew. All right, let's talk about my least favorite part about doing this install so far, the bottom bolts. What I'm seeing is I'm hitting up against this inlet down here and this inlet down here as I was unscrewing those bolts because they're so close. You can't really get a full like wrench in there. So it's really just like a millimeter at a time to get those out. I spent almost probably 40 minutes on those bolts on this entire install, 40 minutes for those bottom bolts. Someone has a trick to do that easier, please tell me, because that was not fun. Anyway, on to the next part. Only other thing they'll say is the instructions say make 2 of these. That's not right. You actually have to make them this way. So you have to make one direction, one the other direction. And then I, being OCD, I know where this is going to plug in or where that's going to plug in. And I wanted the APR badging to kind of show. So this one goes this side, that one goes to this side, and everything's going to be good.
What's up, everybody? All right, I had to quickly interrupt my video just to show one quick little thing here. I was complaining about the hose clamps missing. That is because I was missing a hardware package, which is this hardware package right here. It includes the smaller hose clamps, the large hose clamps, and even more importantly, these bolts. These bolts are for the inlets, the turbo inlets. I had to stop the build, call APR the next day, and they ended up sending this stuff out to me next day. Thank you, APR, for being so responsive. I did speak to a couple of other people that got this intake, and they did not have this problem. So it must have been just a packing miss. I understand warehouses and for like pick, pack, and ship. Sometimes we miss things, and that's okay. So they were able to send this out to me next day. Not a big deal. So I'm going to continue the build, but I have the hardware. I have the power to do this. Super excited to finish it.
The next step here is taking the O-rings and putting them in the groove here for installation. So I think this is going to be the tricky part, is just making sure that these O-rings are placed in there as I set it on and kind of screw it in. It does feel like these could fall out of place pretty easily if you don't actually make sure that it's pushed tight against the intake. So maybe a little bit of finesse needs to happen to make sure that these O-rings stay in place, but it should provide a good seal. So what I learned, I was kind of playing around with it before I started record to understand how you can kind of keep the gasket in place. The gasket moves around a little bit. So what you want to do is put it on there and then kind of set it on there and just make sure around the inside that the gasket actually did hit into the ring for it. And after that, that's when you can start kind of hand screwing these bolts in. It should be a pretty straightforward fit here to screw these in, and I don't want to cross thread it, so I got to be careful there, but yeah, but it should be a pretty straightforward install here. I don't know why that's doing that. There we go, I got it now. Hand tighten first, make sure that you're not cross threading it, because if you go with a tool right away and slam it in, you're probably going to cross thread it, and that's not going to be a good install for you. This last bolt's going to be interesting because it's so far down. I have now a 5mm hex socket to put this in. So we'll do our best to align it. Yeah, so it just takes a little bit of muscle to get that in a little bit further. I am hand torquing it, so it's not like I'm hitting something really hard. For now, this feels like it's right. All right, I'm on the second side here. So here we go. Gasket does look like it's aligning, so I'm good there. Looking from the top. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm not making it like super tight. I'm just kind of doing it nice and loose, and then I'll torque it down with the torque wrench to the correct torque specs. So let's do this bottom one now. Get a light on it. Which that one is going to be, which side? It's going to be on this side right here. All right, so now those are on. I need to torque them down to the correct specs. All right, so I got my torque wrench set to 80 inch-pounds, and I'm going to torque these bad boys down. Adjust the light so I can see everything. And here we go. If I can stop fighting with the lights. They're all set, torqued down correctly. The next step on the process, even though it's pretty trivial, is getting these to align correctly on here so you can actually get to them from the top as you have to torque them down. So I do have them in the right position now, where you have it, the screw mechanism on the outside so you can get to them. They do recommend that you keep them on the side over here. So as you're tightening it, you may have to kind of adjust it one way or the other. Don't adjust it too tight, but you want to keep it on there so when you slide this whole thing on here, it doesn't fall off. So, all right, the last step of the process here is going to be taking the intake and putting it on the flanges here. The nice part about this is I've already positioned these nicely, so it should go on there. I need to route the hoses a little bit to make sure the hoses stay out of the way. This does not go below. This one will definitely need to go above, and these will also need to go above as well for the vacuum lines. This one stays down below, kind of in between. So here we go with me putting it on. So let's loosen it way up now, and there we go. Hey, it's on. Okay, a little lesson about the boots. These actually cannot be as tight. They need to be loosened a little bit. So as you kind of put them on there to make them so they don't fall off, make sure this is still like pretty loose, or else the boots won't actually slide over those inlets. But it's on there now. All right, so one of the weird components that feels a little bit weird in here, but it's not, is this brown line right here. I wasn't sure if it routed above or below. Looking back at the beginning of my video, and I'm probably gonna have another video somewhere in here to kind of show, this is routed above. So they both are routed above, which is perfectly good, perfectly fine by me. I think we'll be good to go. I just wanted to make sure that this was routed appropriately because I was a little concerned about that. So the next step here is connecting the hoses to be able to, for the inlet hoses, they actually cross. So there's one over here that originates from this side, and there's one on this side that originates from this side. So it crosses. You should expect it to cross. So here we go, making sure that it doesn't actually kink. All right, so these hoses on the front are no joke. They definitely require a bit of love to be able to get on, and also making sure that the clamps are oriented in a way that you can actually get to them. So I am going to change this to move over there. And it takes a lot of force to get these on. So the right side clamp didn't work nicely. I may have crushed it as I was trying to open it. So I got a different clamp on there, which should make this install a lot easier than it is right now. So we're doing this right now. Making sure that's on good, which it is. Adjusting the clamp, and we're good. On to the next step. One of the steps that is actually missed in the instructions is reconnecting the PCV. So I am doing that right now. I'm not connected in here. That snapped in nice. And then also down here. That snapped in right nice. Literally, easiest part of it is those snapping in nicely. Well, make sure you reconnect that because the instructions did miss this step. All right, we're on to the next step here, which is getting the brace back installed. In order for me to get it in, I kind of had to pull back on the intake, maybe a little bit like this, to be able to get both sides to slide in. It is kind of awkward because there's a little bit over the frame here that's kind of getting in the way. But now that it's there, I should be able to at least hand tighten some of the bolts on here to get them started. And then you have to torque them down to 88 inch-pounds of torque. So that is also in the instructions. Everything there seems to be good. So the wrench is set to 88 inch-pounds of torque, and I'm going to start torquing it down all the way around, all the way down the bar here. The next step of this is going to be putting these crash sensors back on the bar again. They just kind of clip on right there. So that one's in, and here's one on this side. Both of them are now where they need to be. Going back to the factory box here, I have to remove this piece right here because it's needed from the factory box. So here I am just unscrewing it real quick. So the next step is installing what was provided by the APR for the inlet here. To kind of orient yourself on this, this slot actually goes on the upside. It's what kind of seals the intake area. So you want to make sure this is up and this kind of places directly in. It's kind of a direct drop into this area here. So that's in good now, and you put the screws back in that you just took out. Align the screws. So we'll start these with without the whole socket wrench because it goes a little bit faster. And then you tighten them down to 44. The next step is you tighten it down to 44 inch-pounds. So the next step that they have is inserting the rubber sleeve over the APR, like so. And then they say you're supposed to take these larger clamps and clamping them down around the outside, but they said just put them on here around the outside of this. This has to be oriented a different way. You'll see that the screws are on different sides. I kind of push down like this to make it kind of the shape of that. We are getting close to the end. I'm installing the factory Airbox back in here. They recommend that you start with the rear mounting points and then you swing it forward. So I'm going to start back here. See if I can get these to align, which they just did. Then they said down into the factory mounting points, which there's one right there, there's one right here. It's in the factory mounting point. Now the next thing that you have to do is get the rubber to align onto this piece here. So I'm going to work on getting that to all align and everything to be happy with the rubber here. It's going to be a little weird because I certainly want to make sure the bottom gets on there as well. All right, so I've aligned the filter onto the inlet, and I now just have these screws to be able to move downward. In the graphic that they have, it shows that there's actually some more room here. I don't actually have that room to get this piece in there, so that may be sticking up. I'm going to see how that fits with the factory Airbox, but we're going to torque this thing down. Oh, there it goes. So as you torque it down, it actually pops into place, which is nice. And we're going to do the same on this side. So the specs on this are going to be 30 inch-pounds. So I have my torque wrench set to 30, and I'm torquing it down right now. Oh, there it goes. That was really quick. There you go. One more time. Yep. There we go. So that's on there good. Feels like the clamps all the way around on both sides. We're good to go. At last, the final stretch. I'm super excited about this. I can see the bolts in there pretty well. Everything is sitting well in there. So now I'm going to get the remaining bolts that I have to be able to put those two in. So the specs on those bolts up top are 44. So I set my torque wrench to 44. The next step in installing this is putting this trim piece on. There's clips on this side and this side, this side and this side. They kind of go into place and there's stops. So you just kind of push them in, they're good to go. And you kind of take a look along here. This is all aligning properly. And this should just kind of push in into those areas. Yeah, those snapped in. And then all we got to do is put the push pins back in. And we're almost ready to get to the start here. Before I make the mistake of not putting the hood release on, I'm going to do that right now. Make sure that's there to be able to release the hood, which is awesome. Everything else is looking pretty good. I'm going to stop the video to take a few pictures, and then we're going to put the final piece on. So before I get too carried away, I realized I forgot to clip the oil back in again, like so, because that's needed to remove this. So that's clipped in. This needs to come off so I can put the cover on here, like so. There you go. Don't forget to put this back in. We're gonna have a whole host of issues. That's in. All right, and then there's clips here that should be able to clip up. So if this vehicle is anything like the SQ5, you're not going to hear the turbo spool sounds unless the engine's under load. And what I mean by that is not wide open throttle sport mode. We're talking about like going up a hill and the turbos have to spool a little bit to provide the torque to get up the hill. You'll hear it a little bit more then. But I'm going to flip the camera around
and we're going to take a look at kind of a wide open throttle in dynamic mode. But overall, fun install, a few more engine noises, nothing super drastic, but still kind of fun. So here we go. So I'm going to do one more pull to 60, just so you can kind of hear what it sounds like. I'm going to roll up my windows so you don't have the wind noise, but I definitely can hear the turbos. Pretty good.
So what are my final thoughts on this? The first thing I'll have to say is the intake looks amazing. I really, really like the forged carbon fiber look on the outside of the front inlet. The air filter is just absolutely massive. I am still floored by the way that it looks, how massive it is. It looks really cool. As for future components from APR, the rumors on the block that they are making additional engine covers to make this air filter be able to really be able to perform better. So this is just kind of like a phase one of a multi-phase type of install. The other thing that I'll say is when you're driving the vehicle, you do hear more turbo blow-off sounds. Now, it's not like crazy blow-off sounds like I had in my SQ5, where the Rock Euro intake just made everything whistle and whine and sound like a jet engine. But what I will say is the vehicle really is raspy as it is with the exhaust, and I like the exhaust note over kind of a boy racer blow-off valve type of sound. So it's a really good mixture. It's tame in the sense of sound. Throttle response was interesting. I almost feel as if the turbos are spooling faster. I can't tell whether the horsepower is more or not. The drag strip will be able to tell me something about that. But right now, I mean, just driving it around, I just feel like the turbos spool faster, which means the throttle response is better. And overall, I think it was a great purchase, and it'll give me a reason to be able to open up my hood at car shows. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I am looking forward to additional videos on my SQ7. Thanks again for watching. I'm always interested in hearing your opinions, so drop a comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more tangents on cars, motorcycles, and trucks. Thanks again for watching.